was still a lot of fallout from a lot of the C's that had previously worked out there. Similar to what I experienced out there in Salinas when Rico and Lobo went on their little rip out there. You know, they discouraged a lot of homeboys, whacking Mike Eel, whacking some other little youngsters that got killed out there, killing little man. Those types of things that happened, it left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. My own policies out there, all the members were required to do certain things, throughout the day. I didn't want them to feel like, we were riding them, but when you're out there running a regiment, you got to make sure that your manpower is doing what they're supposed to be doing and that they're on track. All right, you guys, it's episode 58 of Inner Demons, and like always, I'm going to get straight to it. So check it out, you guys. Like I do with every episode that I start, every new episode, I always go back to the last episode and kind of catch up so that I'm not repeating myself. And, listening to the last few minutes of the last episode, there was a lot going on, obviously. Now, like I was saying in the last episode, this was one of the first times that I really questioned the direction of the organization because there just didn't seem like there was any real purpose. There was nothing to gain from doing this except for it was counterproductive. It's counterproductive to everything that we were doing on the streets. Again, these guys that were in leadership positions, I had nothing but the utmost respect for them. And they were obviously in those positions for a reason. But a lot of these guys had been down since the 70s and the 80s. And obviously the streets were different from the last time that they had been out there. So I didn't think that they really had a good grasp on what they were trying to put, what they were trying to do, because it definitely would have affected their money. It definitely would have affected, our ability to generate money out there on the streets. I always liken it to like smacking a beehive because that's what would have happened. They would have lit the streets up. The first time that I really questioned the organization or leadership is back around 94, between 94 and 96, around that time, because this was when a lot of Norteños started walking away. I'm talking about not just Northerners, but you had hermanos and you had carnales that were walking away. They were discouraged and they were walking away in big numbers. It was like the big elephant in the room. Everybody seen what was going on, but nobody really wanted to acknowledge it or address it. It was just like, hey, you know what? As long as it doesn't affect me, I'm going to keep it pushing. Now, one of the things that over the last couple of days since I put out the last episode, one of the things that I did was read some of the comments on the last episode. I'm going to do something that I haven't done in any of the last episodes. And that's just, there was some questions that I'm going to kind of address. And that's really what this episode is based on, one of the questions, because somebody said that, you didn't really identify or you weren't really descriptive with your addiction. And somebody asked about some of the kites that were found. Somebody else commented on how, Pinky was a stand-up guy for telling Vicky, that he didn't want her to be involved anymore. There was some questions. So, let me just say this. I think the last episode, when I was closing it up, one of the things that I said that really resonated was that the walls were closing in on me. I seen everything coming to an end. Literally, when they came in, and I know I'm getting ahead of myself, when they hit my pad in some of the other houses that were, that were in conjunction to this same search right here, I actually had kites, handwritten kites that they found that said, move everything out to the Cadillac, move everything, all the contraband, because I knew they were coming. I felt it. Again, my girl at that time, she seen a lot of the things that I wasn't seeing. And I thought I was on top of my game. But when we're out there and we're running and we're doing things, we think we got everything figured out. And a lot of the times, your girl's with you and she sees things that we don't see because, she's looking for them, but she can see them. And I don't know, I would like to think that some of that stuff, I had a trained eye for, but I guess I didn't. a woman's intuition is priceless, man. So if she tells you something, you better believe it. But again, I knew the walls were closing in on me. The guy with the clipboard, the car that was parked across the street with the cameras in it, I didn't know it until later, obviously. But the GPS tracking devices, the shootout I had, them searching the apartment and finding the paraphernalia. One of the other viewers asked about some of the kites that I talked about, and they wanted to know the contents of the kites. And I mean, realistically, I can't go into all the contents. A lot of it just had to do with the business that I was involved in out there, the books, the money, how much money was coming in, who was doing what out there, the commission, the $200 monthly fees that everybody was required to pay. A lot of it had to do with the business. It was just about the daily business activities that I was involved in. Plus, they had other directives that, pertain to other regiments outside of San Jose. I told you guys, they were gearing up to put me in a position to where, everybody's directives or their communication was going to go through the San Jose regiment. It was going to go through me, and it was going to all be condensed or consolidated, and we were only going to have one visitor, my visitor, go up there and take care of the bulk of the communication. So, they had me doing special assignments on the side, extra stuff that a lot of the other regimental commanders weren't doing. All this responsibility that they were entrusting in me was because of all the things that I was doing as far back as when me and Smokey were running around out there to Sacramento, in the Valley, in the East Bay, San Francisco, Salinas, Watsonville. So, I had a full plate. But the other thing is, me seeing that the walls were closing in on me, I told you guys that, I became trapped back in my addiction. I started using again. I knew things were coming to an end. I got stressed out, and these were triggers. Obviously, there were triggers for me. And, I guess I haven't mentioned, what I was addicted to in the past, or this viewer just came on late or whatever, but it was heroin. I was addicted to opioids. And, this was something that I had struggled with from the time I was 12 years old. And over the years, there were bouts where I was clean. There were times that, lapses in time where I went 1, 2, years clean. A lot of the time, obviously, when I was in the system, I was clean, but, I would come out, something would trigger that addiction, and I'd be right back trapped in it like I was before years ago when I experienced that. And I knew every time that I allowed myself to fall back into it, that if I did, I was going to become trapped. I was going to become a prisoner all over again outside, because I've talked about this before. But when you become addicted to opioids, to heroin, your life, everything that you do in life, you have to base it around that addiction. Because if you're going to go on vacation, you got to have enough dope. If you're going to go away for 4 days, you got to have enough for 4 days. You better have enough. If you're going to go away for 2 weeks, you got to have enough for 2 weeks. You got to make sure that you have it. It's like, it becomes like medicine. It becomes like almost something that you need just to get normal. After a while, when you're addicted to this stuff and you've been on it for so long, it's not even about chasing the high no more. It's not about that. Now it's just about getting normal, just about feeling normal. So that's what it was. I ended up meeting somebody out there in San Jose that was literally right across from the apartment complex that I was staying in Campbell. There was a paisa over there that, I used to talk to him here and there, and the conversation just came up, and he kind of threw something out there. And next thing you know, he basically let me know that he was dealing. So I started going through him, and I was getting ounces for like $4.50 at that time. And I started killing myself with it, literally. And this was something that Vicky had never seen before. She was from Ukiah. Ukiah is way behind. You don't really see that kind of stuff out there. As far as gangs, and this is no disrespect to the homies out there in Yukas that are coming up now, but back then in the 90s, when I was out there in the late 90s, they were way behind. Even the Norteños out there they were just, a lot of them they weren't really educated, and they were just street gang members. And out there, you don't see homeless people out there on the streets. You might see one or two occasions, but you don't see it like you do out in the big cities in San Francisco, Los Angeles, Sacramento, Salinas, where you just see whole communities that are impoverished, that, they're strung out. There's people out there on the streets. So, this was foreign to her. She never experienced it, and she hated it. She hated it. At first, when I started using, I tried to hide my addiction, even from her. But when you're with somebody, obviously, and you're with them every day, eventually they're gonna find out. Eventually they're gonna find out. I wasn't mainlining. I was shooting it into my muscles. It's called muscle popping. And like I said, I wasn't running around with tracks all over me, because when you're muscle popping, it's kind of hard to see it. But eventually she did, and she knew about it because she knew about my past. We obviously talked about it. Eventually it came out, and so I started out, like anybody else. I started out small, but I had a big tolerance because, again, this was something that I had done since the age of 11. And in the beginning, I started out doing a gram, maybe 2 grams, and then that turned into 3 or 4, and then I was doing whole outfits. I'm talking about the whole syringe full. Then I was doing like 2 syringes full, 3 syringes full. Put it like this, normally when you cook up that stuff, you put it in a spoon, and you cook it in the spoon, and it's enough for, a couple fixes, a couple doses, a couple times to get out. But I had started to do so much that I couldn't fit it all in the spoon. I had to use the bottom of a can. And for those of you that are experienced in that, unfortunately, you guys know what I'm talking about. You tear a can, you use a piece of it as a handle, you rip it just right, and you kind of peel it. And then you fold it inward so that you don't cut yourself. And it's like a big cooker. So that's what I was using. I got up to I got to a point where I ended up doing 5 syringes at a time, literally. And I was doing this like once in the morning when I wake up, I do 5 of them. A couple hours later, about 3, 4 hours later, I do another 5. About 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I do another 5. Maybe about 5 o'clock in the evening, another 5. I'm doing like 25 syringes. And I know people are like, yeah, right, bro, you're exaggerating. Trust me, I know. I know that it's hard to believe, because even when I got to jail, when I finally got arrested later on, and I, told the doctor, the nurse, how much I was using, they were like, that's impossible. Nobody uses that much. But I had a dealer's habit. It wasn't nothing to buy 3 or 4 ounces every couple of days. That's what I was doing. I was doing close to 2 ounces every, I want to say realistically, every 4, 5 days. And that's a lot, but I was killing myself, and I didn't care. There was times when I'd be nodded out because I'd be so gouged out on that stuff that I'd be there nodded out in the kitchen, or, in the living room or something. And Vicky would walk in, and obviously I wouldn't be paying attention to my surroundings. I'd be in a nod, a deep nod. And I come up out of it, and I look, and she'd be standing there, and she just look at me, and she'd turn around, go to the bedroom, slam the bedroom door, and turn up her oldies real loud. She was disgusted with the lifestyle that I started living. I turned into something that, she never thought about leaving me. She always stuck with me through it. And I know it was a struggle, but there's no doubt in my mind that she hated the person that I became. And for those of you that are addicted, for those of you that are going through that, and you're in a relationship, and maybe, it's either the wife or the husband that's using, the other one is it's unfair. You know what I mean? At some point, if you don't want to become clean, you don't want to clean yourself up for yourself, do it for your spouse, man, because it's their life literally comes to a stop. They become a prisoner as well, because they're gonna walk with you. They're gonna walk your path. So, that's what it was. For the viewer that asked about my addiction, it was heroin. And this was something that, again, I used since the age of 12. I stopped having a childhood at the age of 12. That right there, I grew up in the streets. I learned how to sell it. I learned how to, hit myself. I learned how to support my own habit. It's sad, but it's true. That's what happened. And, for that same viewer that obviously missed it, you know, I don't blame my mom, but the first time I stuck a needle in my arm was with my mom. My mom was a young, addicted heroin addict herself. And the reason I don't blame her is because the way I look at it is she was caught up in that cycle herself. She was a young, addicted, she was young and she was addicted. And I don't, I've never thought that she had any kind of malicious intentions when she gave it to me. I kind of manipulated it, but that's another story that I've already told. Anyway, so yeah, another viewer talked about lupus and it being incurable, and that's the kind of lupus that Vicky had, and that's why to understand that, and it's not a cop out. I'm not looking for a cop out, but I want you guys to understand that the severity of her health became a major factor when I would end up getting arrested. The type of lupus that she had was the internal kind that attacked her major organs. And in her case, it was her heart. It wasn't her lungs, her kidneys, her liver, it was her heart. When she had her son at the age of 18, that triggered her lupus. And, from the time she was 18 until the time she passed away at the age of 40, she had like it was either 4 or 5 open heart surgeries. And I can't even imagine, because, when it comes to doctors or operating, that's one of my phobias. But she actually went and had heart surgery 4 or 5 times. That's crazy. The first time her heart failed because it was attacking her valves. They put a pig valve in there, and then I think they put a cow valve in when that failed. And then when that deteriorated, they put another pig in. And then when that failed, they put in a mechanical valve. And unfortunately, at the end, that was the last one that she had. She was, the doctors were telling her in the end that she needed another one, but she was to the point where, like, you know what, I'm tired of getting poked. I'm tired of the doctors. Tired of getting cut on. I'm just tired, and my situation didn't help. But you guys will understand that later. But for the viewer that asked that, yes, she had the type of lupus that was the worst kind, the kind that they couldn't do nothing about. All they could do is just give you a bunch of medication to kind of help put a Band-Aid on it. But then at the same time, that would start to kill your kidneys. So, it was bad. The other viewer that asked about the pictures, any pictures of Julio. Julio was a slick cat. I never had no pictures of him. They didn't come out in our discovery. He wasn't part of the actual case. So I never had any pictures of him, never took any pictures of him. So just imagine Julio as being the kind of paisa that's got a little bit of gold in his mouth, occasionally wears a cowboy hat with a big ass cowboy buckle belt and some cowboy boots. I want to say he used to drive a Cadillac, a nice Cadillac. Boy had money, but didn't have any pictures of Julio. One of the other viewers, didn't ask a question, was actually a comment about Pinky being a stand-up guy for telling Vicky, that he didn't want her to be involved. Yeah, it was. When she came out of the visiting room that day at Santa Rita and she told me what he said, I saluted him and I appreciated it, obviously. I told you guys how I felt about involving my loved ones in that lifestyle. I made a commitment. They didn't. And that's another lesson in this video right here. For those of you that are still active and you're doing your thing, hey, I'm not mad at you. You make a commitment, you're the one that's got to lay in your own bed. And if that's what, that's what you want to dedicate your life to, stand on it. But Don't get your loved ones involved. Don't have them. Don't have them facilitate communication. Don't have them, be one of the safe houses. Don't involve them at all. Don't talk about business. No pillow talk. None of that stuff. Because in the end, you're only putting them in harm's way. Trust me, I could do a video on that alone. But anyways, so I want to say it was probably around the last 3 or 4 months while I was out there. I stayed out there, I want to say it was 13 months. It was about 13 months before I would end up getting raided and everything ended up coming to an end. And during that 13 months, I actually stayed clean for most of that time. It wasn't until the end that all that stuff happened. All that stuff started happening, the shootout, the GPS tracking devices, obviously being out there in San Jose, people getting hot and bringing the heat back. There was a lot of different moving parts out there that I think contributed to the heat. They had us under surveillance for a while, and obviously we didn't know. I knew from the GPS tracking devices that they were watching, but I never seen them out there in San Jose. I always had my head on a swivel looking for, cars at the corner or cars just, cats just sitting in their cars on the block. I did a lot of counter surveillance. Whenever I would go home, I would go around the block 2 or 3 times, get on the freeway, get off, act like I was going to get back on, get back off, just so that, if law enforcement didn't know where I was living, I didn't want to bring them to the house. And that was one of the other reasons why I kind of stayed away from traffic at the house, bringing people over there that, really had no business over there, not just to bring them over there just to kick it or for social reasons. That's where I laid my head. That's where my family was at, or at least that's where my girl was at. So that was one of my policies. Now, anyways, when I started to get these directives that I told you guys about involving the 2 prosecutors and the tow truck driver that was out there in Salinas, it obviously, it was on my mind a lot out there. I was thinking about it like nonstop. I didn't have a problem with making a sacrifice. There were other things that were happening out there that I haven't spoke on, and I'm not going to speak on them. I don't have a problem putting in work. But these 2 situations right here just didn't make sense. It did not make sense. Why would, I be selected for an assignment like this where I would go out to Salinas as a regimental commander for San Jose, a regimental commander that had a lot of responsibility. You take me out of that equation, I guarantee you Pony wouldn't have lasted long at all as far as continuing to generate money and keeping that regiment together. He would have tripped up. I give him a month or 2 at the most. So, with that in mind, I question that. As a regimental commander, why would you have me go out there and participate in this? I don't want you guys to get the wrong idea, because I've never had a problem with putting in work, but because of, the reasoning and, who it was, it just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Now, like I also told you guys, I never questioned it. I never questioned it because I was schooled like that. If you get a directive, if you're asked to do something, you just do it. Even if you feel like it's wrong, as long as you got your facts, you got all your ducks lined up and you got your facts straight, the law's on my side as far as NF law or NR law, whatever I was at that time. So, I never questioned it. It was just something that I couldn't understand in my mind. So for the next couple of weeks after I get these directives, I told the homie that came down from Salinas, just whenever you get ready doing what you got to do, your recon or whatever, getting things situated out there, call me, bro. And, we'll fine tune how we're going to do this. As far as the other situation, that was something that was dumped in my lap that I was going to have to figure out for myself. At no time did I ever go down there and do any recon. I never went down there and, watched to see if I could figure out their movements or their patterns or anything like that. I was hoping that I could bide time. I was just hoping that they would either come to their senses or, come to the conclusion that, you know what, this is probably not a good idea. So that's why I was biding time. And, as far as Vicky, let me tell you guys like this. She never spoke on my obligations. She never spoke on the things that, that I had to do out there in the streets. She didn't like it. And I knew it. I could tell. I lived with her. I seen just whether it was her reaction to different things that was going on when I'd have to leave and go take care of something. She didn't like it, but she never questioned it and she never spoke on it, at least not while I was out there on the streets. But this was the only time that I told you guys that I sat her down and I talked to her, and I was straight up with her. Look, this is what I'm being asked to do, and I'm going to have to participate. I'm going to have to participate at some point. Otherwise, I'm going to end up in trouble. It's going to be my career that's going to be on the line. This is something I can't question. She obviously didn't know about politics. She didn't know about this stuff. But even to her, as a civilian, an outsider, she was like, that's stupid. Why would they do that? Why would they do something like that? And, I couldn't even answer her question. The only thing I could say is that, you know what, they feel like it had become personal, and this was a way of giving back to the organization for a lot of the damage that they had done. And there was other things that they had done to make it seem like it was personal during some of the court proceedings when they were trying the cases and they were actually in trial. I remember them making statements to the effect of, these guys are scum of the earth. All they do is kill people out there on the streets. And it's guys like this that don't deserve to be out there, in society with the rest of, the community out there. These guys belong in prison, and, they're scum of the earth. That's what they said. I don't know which one it was, but, again, they were a husband and wife team. And in some cases they worked together. So anyways, for the next couple of weeks, I would just continue to there was nothing I could really do to buy time to hold that up. I was just kind of just going with the flow out there. I was waiting for the homie to call me back from Salinas. And at that time, I was just trying to generate as much money as I could, because I knew that once this all happened, if there was some miracle that we were to get away with all this, I knew that we were just going to have to just slide back and wait for the heat to basically just cool down. We were going to have to wait until, they were through tearing up the streets of San Jose, raiding people, doing sweeps, because again, you guys are smart enough to know that if something like that was to happen, just imagine what they would do. Just imagine how the streets of San Jose would have been, following an event like that. It would have been huge, epic. That would have been groundbreaking news for whatever YouTubers were around at that time. I don't know who they are, but that would have been exclusive, groundbreaking news right there. Anyways, one of the other viewers too, you alluded to a spot that was off of A-Born, and you were absolutely correct. It was Wendy's. That was a place where I used to have Pony meet Largo at Wendy's. That place right there will become, you guys will understand later, but just remember Wendy's off of A-Born later on in these stories, because again, it's going to become a factor. It's something that you're going to be like, whoa, okay, that's got to be that situation right there. It's got to be that individual. You guys will understand later, but just remember, Wendy's off of A-Born was a spot that we would meet Largo at, and was always for the purpose of dropping off dope. Now, I remember there was one time where I actually went over there, and, that was Pony's job. It was his job to do the day-to-day activities and, go out there and deal with the manpower and collect the money and distribute the drugs and all that. Largo was like somebody that we dealt with on the side with Roger and a couple of other individuals that we would meet, off to the side. Otherwise, the regimental members were the ones selling the dope. But Latigo was somebody I knew personally from doing time with him. So he would call up occasionally and we would meet him over there. Now, there was one time that I went over there. And that one time that I went, I would end up finding out later that I was on surveillance at that time. It just so happened to be the one time that I went over there. And it was because Pony is the one that led them to that spot right there. I don't know, somebody told on him, but he went over there to meet Latigo. And I remember Pony called me up. I told him, hey, you need to go over there, drop off a couple to the homie right there at the same spot. And he called me back around 20 minutes later. And he's like, hey, bro, he's like, there's this cat that's over there. He's like, I'm in the store right now, but this cat's looking in my car, bro. And that's something I didn't mention to you guys. I actually bought Pony a car out there. I bought a couple cars for some of the other regiment members, but he had a Firebird. It was nice. It had headers on it. It was a nice car. But anyways, he called me and he's like, this white cat's looking in my car. He's like, I'm gonna jam him up right now. And Pony's not a hitter. Pony mess around and get beat up. So I was like, bro, before you confront him, I'll be there in 5 minutes. My house was literally 10 minutes away. It was around the corner. So I jump in my truck. I fly over there real quick. I pull up in the parking lot, jump out. He's coming out of the store. And I'm like, where's he at, bro? And he's like, he was right there. He was looking in my window. He's like, he was actually looking in my car like that. And he says, he's gone now. We never seen anybody. Nothing happened. We ended up leaving. He followed me back to my house. That's when they followed us. That led them to my house. So later on in the police reports, it would come out that that's one of the first times that they see me under surveillance after the shooting, that I met Pony over there. And I got out of my truck and we were scanning the parking lot. And that's when it all started to get bad. There's a couple of other things that I'm going to mention in some of the future episodes that I kind of missed. So if I go back, I hit rewind in a couple of these next episodes, I'm sure some of you won't mind. It's more content. It's part of the story that I missed. I'm trying to lead this up to the county jail to where everything started. And I don't want to get there too fast, but I'm still got a couple weeks left where I'm out there, and there's still a couple incidents that happened. The next episode, I'm going to get into some of that stuff. This is probably a good time to cut this one right here. I really wanted to get into the addiction part on this episode and answer some of the questions that some of you viewers dropped in the comments. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This is episode 58 of Inner Demons. This is your boy B, and I'm out.